Welcome to the Business English Podcast, and thank you for tuning in. I'm Rob, here to help you master the language you need to thrive in the global business environment. Today's episode is called, Sorry, I Missed That, Getting Repeats Without Sounding Basic. And I want to start by telling you a quick story about Charlie. Charlie is a bright, up-and-coming professional who recently moved to London for a role in a fast-paced tech firm. He's fluent in English, at least on paper, but whenever his colleagues rattle off crucial deadlines or industry jargon at lightning speed, he's left nodding, smiling, and silently panicking. Does that sound familiar? Charlie's biggest worry? He doesn't want to look unprofessional by asking for repetition. Here's the twist. It's not that Charlie's English is weak, he's simply missing a crucial skill. Knowing exactly how to ask for a repeat without seeming insecure or basic. And that's what we're diving into today, because as it turns out, being able to confidently request clarification is a hallmark of strong communication skills. It shows that you're actively engaged and determined to get things right, rather than just winging it. So, how can you turn a simple "huh?" into a polished, professional request for repetition? And is there a way to do it that builds rapport instead of breaking it? In this episode, we're exploring the secrets behind clarifying misunderstandings like a pro. We'll look at why this skill is so essential, the real-world situations where you'll need it most, and, most importantly, how to put it into practice without over-apologizing or sounding robotic. Curious about the exact phrases you can use to elevate your game in meetings, presentations, and those quick office chats? Well, stick around because we've got you covered. In fact, we'll be sharing some advanced, natural-sounding expressions you can start using right away. By the end of today's show, you'll feel more confident stepping into that Monday morning check-in or any conversation, knowing that you have the right tools to clarify crucial points every single time. Ready to take your business English to the next level? Let's get started. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Business English Podcast, helping professionals communicate more effectively, more confidently, and with impact. With your host, Rob, from Energetic English. Let's get down to business. Let's talk about why it's so important to master the art of asking for repetition without feeling awkward or sounding basic. Think about it. We all know how fast-paced business conversations can be, especially in big cities like London. Missing even a single piece of information can mean deadlines getting confused, tasks aren't done right, and relationships with clients get strained. And that's the last thing you want. So let's break down exactly what this skill can do for you. First, it gives you clarity. When you're clear on every last detail, be it a due date, a budget figure, or a piece of feedback, you're able to perform at your highest level. Plus, no more sleepless nights wondering if you're on the right track. Second, it projects confidence. Ironically, people often think asking for repetition shows weakness, but it's actually a sign that you've invested in the conversation. It tells your colleagues and your boss that you're not willing to settle for guesses. After all, in a professional environment, accuracy matters more than saving face. Now, let's consider a few situations where you'll need this skill. Picture yourself in a team meeting. The project manager rattles off 5 different tasks you need to handle over the next week, each with a separate deadline. You catch the first 4, but the last one flies right past you. Without a solid, confident way to ask for a recap, you might fall behind. But with the right approach and a simple polished request, you'll stay on top of every deliverable. Or how about client calls? You're wrapping up a call with a new client from overseas. They start talking about specific contract terms that are critical to the deal, but their accent or speed of speaking really throws you off. You only catch half of what they've said. That's the moment when a well-chosen, natural-sounding phrase can be your secret weapon, ensuring you lock in the correct details and build credibility with your client. And of course, there are the glorious and infamous networking events. You're mingling, meeting new contacts, shaking hands, and you run into someone who works at the company you've been dying to connect with. They fire off their job title, role, maybe even an update about their latest project. You missed it? Don't sweat it. Using the right phrases can save you from an embarrassing "what was your name and title again?" moment. Instead, you come off as poised and genuinely interested. So, yes, asking for repeats is about so much more than just words. It's about doing your job well, boosting your professional image, and making sure nothing important slips through the cracks. But how do you actually form these requests so they sound natural and confident? We'll get into the exact phrases in just a moment. Some you might never have thought to use. But before we do, there's a common trap many professionals fall into when trying to clarify. If you ever found yourself apologizing repeatedly or feeling like you're almost begging for information, stick around because we'll cover how to avoid that too. Stay tuned, by the time we're done, you'll have a whole toolkit of phrases and strategies ready to go. Let's move on to the how of it all. Now that we've established why it's crucial to get clarity in fast-paced business settings, let's dive into the how. Specifically, how to ask for a repeat without sounding too formal or too unsure of yourself. I'm going to share 5 advanced, natural-sounding phrases that work wonders in professional scenarios. Each time, I'll say the phrase twice. The first time, just listen carefully. The second time, feel free to repeat it out loud, shadowing my pronunciation. Then I'll give you a quick scenario when you can use it. Sound good? And if you would like more valuable content such as this, including transcripts, sign up to our weekly newsletter, The 3-Minute Minutes. The link is in the description. So, let's begin. Number 1. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last part. Could you walk me through it again? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last part. Could you walk me through it again? Scenario. You're in a team huddle and your project manager quickly lists off 5 separate deadlines. You get 4, but the last one slips away. Instead of pretending you heard everything, you use this phrase. It signals you care about the details and you want to ensure you're on track. Number 2. Just to make sure we're on the same page, could you run that by me once more? Just to make sure we're on the same page, could you run that by me once more? Scenario. You're wrapping up a phone call with a potential client. They shared detailed requirements, but you caught yourself zoning out for a second. This phrase lets you politely confirm all the details. Plus, it shows you've invested in delivering exactly what they asked for. Number 3. Sorry to jump in, but I want to confirm I've got this right. Could you restate that for me? Sorry to jump in, but I want to confirm I've got this right. Could you restate that for me? Scenario. You're on a conference call with multiple team members talking over each other. You pick up a crucial point about budget changes, but you're not 100% sure you heard correctly. Use this phrase to pause the whirlwind conversation and clarify the key numbers. Number 4. I might be missing something. Would you mind clarifying that a bit more? I might be missing something. Would you mind clarifying that a bit more? Scenario. You're chatting with a colleague in the hallway about a new product launch. They throw around abbreviations or department lingo you're not familiar with. Instead of nodding blankly, this phrase helps you probe deeper while still sounding professional and proactive. Number 5. I'm not fully tracking. Could you break it down again for me? I'm not fully tracking. Could you break it down again for me? Scenario. You're in a brainstorming session where someone shares a complex idea too quickly. Rather than guess at what they meant, you use this phrase to have them explain it in simpler terms, showing your eagerness to understand before making decisions. These phrases are your secret sauce for sounding both courteous and competent. Notice how each one has a straightforward structure. An initial acknowledgement that you need clarity, followed by a polite request for them to repeat or explain further. That's the magic formula. Now, you might be wondering if you should just memorize these phrases word for word, or if there's room for variation. Great question. I'll be addressing that in our next segment, when we talk about common errors people make and how to avoid sounding like a script. Because we've all heard those cringe-worthy moments when someone repeats a phrase so mechanically it feels unnatural. But there's another critical element we haven't touched on yet: your tone and intonation. Even the best phrase can fall flat if you say it the wrong way. Coming up, I'll share a simple trick for nailing that professional, confident tone every time. Don't miss it. Now that you've got some powerful phrases in your toolkit, let's cover the most common pitfalls people run into when trying to clarify information in a business environment, and of course, how you can avoid them. First up, overusing apologies. It's easy to default to "I'm so sorry" every time you don't understand something, but too many apologies can actually undermine your confidence. One polite acknowledgement is usually enough. Try switching from "I'm sorry" to a single clear "Sorry, could you walk me through that again?" and then move on. No need to dwell on the apology. Another big one, sounding frustrated, or worse, raising your voice. When you're pressed for time or feeling stressed, it's tempting to say, "Wait, what?" in an exasperated tone. That can come across as aggressive or impatient, which isn't great for team morale or client relationships, it has to be said. Instead, take a moment to breathe and deliver your request calmly. It shows respect and keeps the conversation friendly. Then there's mumbling or speaking too quickly. Let's face it, if you ask for repetition in a rushed, unclear way, you're basically throwing the same problem back at the other person. Slow down, enunciate, and maintain a clear professional pace. This ensures your counterpart understands you the first time, so you don't have to repeat the repeat request, if you catch my drift. And here's a pro tip for when you get that clarification. Reinforce your understanding by briefly restating what you heard. Something like, "Okay, so you're saying the deadline is Friday at noon, correct?" Doing this not only confirms you're on the same page, but also shows you're actively listening and ready to take action. But what if you still don't fully grasp the explanation, even after they've repeated? Don't worry, that doesn't mean you should give up. In our conclusion, I'll share one final approach to seamlessly handle those "third time's a charm" moments. Trust me, it'll save you a ton of awkwardness in the long run. Stick around, we're almost at the finish line. If there's one thing to take away from today's episode, it's that asking for clarity is a mark of professionalism, not a sign of weakness. By mastering a few polished phrases and avoiding those common pitfalls, you'll find your confidence soaring in every conversation. Before we wrap up, here's one final tip for those moments when you still don't quite understand, even after a second or third repeat. Acknowledge that you're still unclear, but suggest a quick follow-up by email or short recap after the meeting. This way, you're showing initiative, preserving everyone's time, and making sure nothing gets lost in translation. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you found this episode helpful, share it with a colleague who could also benefit. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming tips on refining your business English skills. Until then, keep practicing, keep pushing those comfort zones, and of course, keep it strictly business.
You have been listening to the Business English Podcast. Remember to subscribe, leave a review, and we'll see you next time.